This episode is sponsored by the Body Image Upgrade, a 30-day course helping you rebuild your relationship with your body. Tools, resources, and daily exercises to upgrade your body image. Learn more at bodyimageupgrade.com and enter the code podcast for 50% off. Welcome to Breaking Body Biases, a podcast about creating health and happiness without worrying about your weight. I'm Christine D. Philippus, certified fitness professional, studio owner, and creator of FitProEd, an online education platform for group fitness instructors. Join me every week as I interview fellow fitness pros, dietitians, wellness practitioners, and a wealth of others who are sharing their journey and helping to destroy diet culture. Welcome to episode 34 of the Breaking Body Biases podcast. This is Christine, your host. And before we get into the show this week and our amazing guests, I want to share with you a fun new way that I have explored a new way to move my body. For my birthday, I bought myself a pair of rose gold roller skates. They are simply amazing. And this past week, I held a roller skating social at my studio. I own Pop Fit Studio in the Philadelphia suburbs, and our studio is quite large. Not as big as a roller skating rink, but close. And it was so much fun to just roller skate without the intention of burning calories or the goal of working out or sweating. It was just fun. And have you done something like that lately? That's just fun, joyful movement. I mean, smile on your face, feel like a kid again. Can't wait to do it again. Joyful movement. I encourage you to give it a try. Maybe it's roller skating, maybe it's something else, but we could all use some joyful movement in our lives. And if you're curious as to what exactly is joyful movement, I have episodes about joyful movement. Many of our guests, I ask people every episode, what is their favorite way to move their body? There are a lot of great ideas in all of our episodes. And if you want, go to our social media and share something with us. Maybe you have an idea that myself or some other listeners might want to try too. This week, I am beyond excited to share a new episode with you. A few months back, I attended CanFit Pro. They held a session entitled, Does the Fitness Industry Have a Look? And I was completely blown away by this session, of course. The panelists, such a diverse background, all shared their stories, struggles, their journey, and it was so, so good. One of the panelists was weight stigma expert, ACE certified health coach and group fitness instructor, functional training specialist, Ragen Chastain. And I think everyone that attended that session could attest to the fact that Reagan was dropping truth bombs left and right. And quite honestly, I think she lit a fire under everyone in attendance to just do more, to share more of this information. And I knew moments into her sharing her story that I wanted to have her on the show, and I'm ecstatic that she took the time to join me and agreed to be a guest on the show. And I think that you will agree that she is an amazing guest for this show. Reagan is a speaker, a writer, a multi-certified fitness pro, and thought leader in health at every size and weight stigma, with particular expertise in healthcare and fitness wellness. Utilizing her background in research methods and statistics, Reagan has brought her signature mix of humor, which you'll hear a little bit of today, along with hard facts, which you'll hear a lot about today, to diverse stages from Google headquarters to Dartmouth to the CanFit Pro conference that I mentioned, and now to the Breaking Body Biases podcast. Author of the blog Dances with Fat, the book Fat, the Owner's Manual, co-author of HACE Health Sheets, Weight Neutral Healthcare Guides for Practitioners, Patients, and Advocates, and editor of the anthology The Politics of Size. Reagan is frequently featured as an expert in print, radio, television, and documentary film. Reagan is also a national dance champion, a triathlete, a marathoner who holds the Guinness World Record for heaviest woman to complete a marathon. And she co-founded the Fit Fatties Facebook group, which has over 10,000 members, which I can attest is an amazing group and is very well vetted. So if you're looking to be a part of this group, it may take some time, but it is an amazing group. Reagan lives in LA with her partner and two adorable dogs. I am so grateful for Reagan, for the work that she is doing, for sharing her expertise with us, with our listeners. And again, her Facebook group offers so much community, not just information, but such a strong community. And we need more of that in the world. In this episode, she shares her journey, like I'd mentioned, and her experience of having experienced weight stigma in the fitness industry and the changes that need to happen in order for the industry to be better, to just be better. So much great insight from Reagan. So let's get into the episode. So welcome to the show, Reagan. I am so excited to talk to you today after hearing you on the panel at CanFit Pro. I know listeners are in for a treat today.
Oh, thanks. I am thrilled to be here. So I'm excited.
Okay, so we're going to start with the question that I ask every guest on the show is, how did you get to where you are now?
So I always was involved in sports, but I was also always kind of a bigger kid. But because I was a successful athlete, I think I didn't get as much kind of negative body feedback as I would have otherwise. But then between high school and college, I became obsessed with becoming thin. And that devolved into a full-blown eating disorder. And that is actually when I got my first fitness certification. And I got it to hide my eating disorder because it was normal to be at the gym that much if you were a fitness professional. And it really broke my relationships with my body and with movement and with food. And as I sort of pulled myself up out of diet culture and into a place of fat liberation and health at every size, I continued to do fitness and fitnessy things. I was a competitive ballroom dancer. I've done a couple marathons. I now am doing triathlons. And so my thing is always, nobody's obligated to participate in fitness, but everybody who wants to should be welcome. And participating doesn't make us better than people who don't, right? I've done both. I know for sure that having a Netflix marathon and completing a marathon are morally equivalent activities. And so I just want to use any power and privilege that I have to make the sports and fitness world open to more people.
That's really interesting what you said about being a fitness instructor hid your disorder, because it is really normal if you're a fitness professional to be at the gym a lot. Like, it's your job to be there a lot, so that it hid. So do you think that that is a common thing that you see in the fitness industry, that a lot of fitness professionals can take on disordered behavior and it's normalized because of it's kind of your job?
Yeah, I've heard from other fitness instructors who had similar experiences. I see things that are kind of red flags to me that may be the situation with instructors. And it's something that unfortunately is really encouraged in the fitness world, right? We have this enough is never enough attitude. We always have to do more, and we should be comparing ourselves to other people, and we should derive our self-esteem from doing more, being better than somebody else. And so it creates this toxic fitness culture that a lot of different oppression arises from, including fat phobia. And it really is based in these disordered ideas around food and movement and bodies.
Right. So you talked a little bit about the toxicity in the fitness industry and culture, and just fitness culture. So let's get into that and talk about weight stigma in the fitness industry.
Yeah, so weight stigma is rampant in the fitness industry, even within our certification programs, right? My certification program was deeply fat phobic, considers fat people to be a special population, and encourages instructors to stereotype us and make assumptions about us. So I basically had 2 chapters of how to stereotype and condescend to myself, which is not that fun. I recently completed a diversity and inclusion training for fitness pros that not only didn't discuss size diversity, but actively engaged in weight stigma. And so it's a huge problem that this is an industry that has become so wrapped up with the diet and weight loss industry that they are at this point really inseparable. And often, as a fat athlete, the only way I see myself represented in a fitness space is in a wall of before and so-called after pictures, right? Which says, when I walk in, we see you as a problem to be solved, we see you as a project, and we see you as unworthy until you look different. And knowing what I know about the rates of weight regain, I know that after those after pictures, there's an after where about 95% of those people regain their weight. and then feel like failures and remember the time when everybody said, I like you better when you're thin. And so it just becomes this self perpetuating cycle of then people try again and again and again, and they end up weight cycling, which is shown to have negative health impacts. And so it all comes from this idea that the fitness industry should be about making people thin.
Yeah, having been in the fitness industry for a long time and actually as a studio owner, that's really what sells, like doing those before and after pictures, making people feel like aspirational. And it's really so detrimental to everyone involved to go that route. So what can we do to help shift and shift the industry fully?
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to it, right? Part of it is just being honest. We know that 95% of people who undergo intentional weight loss attempts will lose weight short term and gain it back long term. And so we have to start being honest about that. One of the most common things that fitness pros say to me is, well, I sell weight loss because it's what my clients want. And I get that, but your clients probably also want to fly, but that doesn't make it ethical to tell them to jump off their garage and flap their arms real hard, right? You have to have a reasonable expectation that you can provide the service that you're selling. And in the case of weight loss, it's simply not true. And so I think we can start with being honest. Look, research shows that we aren't really in control of our body size, but I can help you be stronger. I can help you lift your grandkid. I can help you dominate your Saturday wheelchair basketball game, right? I can help you with a lot of different health and fitness goals, but we're not going to put weight at the front and center of that because that's something we don't have as much control over. And it really messes up your relationship with your body and with movement when we do that. And so we can lead clients down that path. And I'm seeing it more and more. I'm seeing advertising about like strength, stamina, flexibility, rather than about body size changes. And so I think there's a positive movement in the industry, and we can really be part of that by focusing on goals that people have some control over.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, what you said about it's what your client wants. And that's in part because that's what society is selling us overall. So we get clients that come into the studio that say, oh, I need to lose weight. And we ask like, well, why? Why do you need to lose weight? They don't really want to, even if you dig deep and ask them deeper questions. It's just the expectation that weight loss is the answer to whatever issues that are going on in their lives. So I'd love for you to share, because you are a researcher and you have some amazing research around weight loss and around weight stigma. So I'd love for you to share with listeners some of the things that you've discovered that we just, in society, we just accept that, smaller is healthier. And you've done a lot of research in this area.
Yeah. So I actually got into health at every size, that piece of fat liberation, through the research. I was looking to see what was the best diet, which one worked the most. And so I decided, my background was research methods and statistics, I would do a literature review and I'd find the best diet. And that's what I was going to do, because I had been doing diets for years and luckily did not have a full relapse into my eating disorder. But I certainly had the experience of like lose weight, gain it back, lose weight, gain it back. And so what I found was that there wasn't a single study anywhere, or even more than a tiny fraction of people were actually succeeding at long-term significant weight loss. And so, being a fan of logic and math, I went through, and I have to tell you, I went through the studies twice because I was so sure this couldn't be real, right? Besides white supremacy and racism, the idea that I could be thin if I wanted to had been sold to me more aggressively than anything else in my life, by doctors, by fitness professionals. And I was like, it's not possible that there's no evidence to back this. And so I went through all the research again. I was doing calculations by hand, and no, that's the case, right? This is what we know. Most people will lose weight short term, but that doesn't mean that they can lose more weight than the little bit that they lose, or that they can keep it off long term. And that's what we see. About 95% of people gain it back, up to 2/3 gain back more than they lost. So like I said, seeing that, I was like, well, I like logic. I like math. I'm not going to keep doing something that, based on the research and my own experience, isn't working. What else is there? And it turns out there's a lot of research out there that shows, and this is understanding that health is not an obligation. It's not a barometer of worthiness. It's not entirely within our control. But if we want to support our health, there's a ton of research that shows that behaviors are a much better predictor of future health than body size. So if you look at Way et al., Matheson et al., Berry et al., the Cooper Institute longitudinal studies, we see over and over again the same thing, that people who have similar health behaviors have similar health outcomes, regardless of size. And we also have to understand when we talk about negative health outcomes for fat people, we just make an assumption that, oh, if fat people have these negative outcomes more than thin people, it must be because they're fat. But in fact, fat people are subjected to weight stigma, weight cycling or yo-yo dieting, and staggering inequalities in healthcare. And so we have to look at how are those things contributing. We don't have any idea what fat people's health and fitness would actually look like if we weren't constantly subjected to stigma, weight cycling, and healthcare inequalities. And so from a research perspective, those confounding variables are almost never looked at or even discussed in the research, right? It's just a simple, if fat bodies experience this negative outcome more than thin bodies, then fat bodies are the problem, making them thin is the solution. And that would fail you in freshman research methods, right?
Yeah.
Hard. And so it's frustrating to me to read this research and be like, literally as a freshman, they would have been like, maybe this isn't for you. You really don't understand this on a very basic level, being published in peer-reviewed journals. So that piece of it is frustrating to me, but there's a lot to really understand. But at the bottom line, if we want to support our health, intentional weight loss is statistically the worst thing we could try.
Right. It's interesting though, because it's what is done. Like if it's not based in research, then why is it acceptable?
Because it's super profitable. So
Right.
the weight loss industry started to become popular in the 30s, and then post World War II became more popular, and now is a $71 billion industry. And that's up from $20 billion in 2012. So just in the last about 10 years, a $51 billion increase. That's an amount of money that you can't even really wrap your head around.
Right.
And so we've got an industry that actually creates its own clients, right? Because the most common outcome of weight loss attempts is weight gain. And there's nothing wrong with being fat or becoming fatter, but there is something wrong with an industry that makes people larger, blames them for that, and then sells their product to them again. And that's what we're seeing. And that's the only way they could have that kind of exponential growth. If their product worked, the weight loss industry would be out of business.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be making $50 billion more now than they did, roughly 10 years ago.
Yeah. Never thought about, I've always thought about it in lines of it's a business. But wow, that really puts it all in perspective when you hear the research and then understand that the industry isn't using the research correctly. Or you
or at all.
At all. That's an understatement. I was being nice there. So you mentioned something about health not being an obligation. It just made me think about in the fitness industry, we as fitness professionals, we are almost like taught that it's our moral obligation to help people, to help them be healthier. So what are your thoughts on that, on like healthism? Because you really, that was a great statement. Like when you talked about that, it's not an obligation.
No, it's really not. And the way I know that is that I like the Olympics. And there's a sport called skeleton in which you go 80 miles an hour down an ice chute on a sled face first. This does not prioritize the health, right? The entire NFL is based on athletes risking their short and long-term physical and mental health in the hopes that their team will win enough points to eventually win jewelry. That does not prioritize the health. A lot of fitness, a lot of sports aren't about prioritizing health. What this idea of health being an obligation becomes is a way to justify oppression, including fat phobia, ableism, healthism. And it's based on ideas that end up being pretty hypocritical when you start scratching the surface a little bit, right? People are allowed to do what they want. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, jump out of a helicopter wearing skis, be sedentary and eat only whatever foods people say are like quote unquote bad foods. I don't do food moralization personally, right? But like, however, people get to do that. And this idea that prioritizing health is some kind of moral or social obligation is really just a way to mask and justify oppression.
Yeah. Yeah. We see it a lot during the past 2 years, year and a half, during COVID, because people were saying during shutdowns and during now vaccination mandates that, oh, the government should care more about fast food and other things that are often equated to poor health. And what you just said was very interesting to take, because I do see a lot of people posting on social media about that, about saying, well, if you're going to mandate this or prioritize all the restrictions regarding COVID, then we should take all the fast food away, or we should prioritize mandate gym memberships, which I would benefit from, force memberships to my gym. But again, we know that doesn't really equate to better health.
Yeah. Well, and so here's the thing. We really like to water down health to a personal choice, which isn't what the research says, right? Research says maybe about 25% of our health comes down to our personal choices. And we really want to make it only about food and movement. When, for example, social connections are shown to have more impact on health than blood pressure, right? And sleep. And you know what improves health is ending oppression. Racism is a public health crisis, and we treat it like an inconvenience that people of color should deal with on their own, right? These are things, having thriving wages and vacation time. That's health. That's public health. And so we like to ignore all the things that are societal and part of systemic systems of oppression to just be like, put down the hamburger fatty. And that's not how health works. And in fact, like Peter Muning out of Columbia found that the stress of weight stigma is actually correlated with the same health conditions to which being fat is correlated. And we see that also with racism, right? The stress of oppression is correlated with health issues. And so we have to look at those things instead of being like, shut down all the fast food or force people to exercise or whatever ridiculous thing is out this. We have to look at what can we do as a society to bring down barriers to people having the access to movement they might want to do, to food they want to eat, to healthcare, to thriving wages and vacation time. What can we do about that instead of wanting to point fingers at what some individual eats or how much they do or don't exercise?
Yeah. So let's get into some subtle ways that we know the weight stigma that we see, that we know about. But what are some subtle ways that weight stigma can show itself and that we often don't notice, that we overlook?
One of the things that I notice as a fat athlete is attempts at support that are wildly out of perspective with how people support other people. So I can be in a race and 10 people before me will go past somebody and they will do nothing. And I will go by them and they will start cheering for me like I donated a kidney to their child. Good job. You can do it. I have had people, I'm in a 5K and, they're like, don't give up. You can do this. And I'm like, look, there'd be nothing wrong if I couldn't do it. There'd be nothing wrong if I gave up. But also, like, I've done a couple marathons. I'm probably finishing this 5K today. And like, what about me makes you think that I would give up where you don't think any of the other people here would? Why are you signaling me out? Sounds like you have stereotypes about people my size and you want to kind of visit those on me, but in a way that you see as positive, right? Like you want to get your Save to Fatty badge or coat. So like, there's that piece of it. There's people who make comments, they'll come up to me at the gym. Oh, you keep at it and you're going to lose that weight. And I enjoy responding by saying, what weight? And then having just a real uncomfortable conversation. So, that's a piece of it. But yeah. And as you get that as a dancer, people come up to me and say like, I can't believe that you can dance this well at your size. And it's like, that's a you problem. Like you have stereotypes about me. I actually somebody sent me a video and it said, nobody could believe what happened when this guy hit the dance floor. And the guy was John Lindo, who's one of the best West Coast swing dancers in the world and also a fat man. And so what happened was he was dancing in I think it was an international championship invitational, but they rewrote the story to be like the beer delivery guy just like stumbled out there and oh my gosh, he has some moves, right? And that's not the case. Everybody knew what was going to happen when he hit the dance floor. People show up to watch this man dance.
Right.
but we rewrite all of these stories to fit a paradigm where it's unbelievable that fat people would have talent because thinness is made such a gateway, right? The stereotype of beauty that's rooted in whiteness, thinness, cis, hetero, able-bodiedness becomes this gateway. And then we actually get brainwashed to believe that people outside of that stereotype don't have talent, don't have ability, can't be athletes, etc., despite the existence of us, many of us.
Wow, that is so true. And I've interviewed someone early on in the podcast about our biases, and it's kind of the why we named the show what we did. And it's interesting to explore those because I do at times have those thoughts. I would never verbalize them, but I notice them because of the culture that I was raised for 40 years now, like in society, and believing that weight is a factor in our health and that thin is healthier, and all the diet culture garbage that we learn. So I find even myself noticing those things. So it's really important to go back and check our biases and not stereotype and not make a judgment when you have no idea. So I wanted to ask you about why you started Fit Fatties on Facebook. You have an amazing community on Facebook that, mind you, if you're listening and you're wanting to get in, it may take a little while because it's an extremely safe place. You really vet people in order to be on that group because there's a lot of trolls out there. But why did you start the group, and what's your goal for this community?
Yeah, we started it. So Jeanette DePatty, who's a dear friend of mine, also a fat fitness instructor. She does Everybody Can Dance and the Fat Chick Works Out. We just wanted a space because in talking about fitnessy things, you can join groups on Facebook, but there's always like a ton of weight loss stuff and Transformation Tuesday. I actually got kicked out of a group recently for posting a before and after that were the same for Transformation Tuesday and talking about my transformation from diet culture to health at every size. They did not appreciate that. But yeah, so it's hard to find a place, but there are lots of questions that you have. In fitness as an athlete, does anybody know a bra that will work with shoes? Anybody else do fencing? And so we just wanted to create a space where people of all sizes could come and talk about this stuff from a totally weight neutral perspective. And so our rules are incredibly strict. There's absolutely no weight loss talk, no diet talk, no food talk of any kind, which makes it safe for people dealing with eating disorders who want to talk about movement, and that's safe for them, but food talk isn't. And so, yeah, we started it. And I remember when we got 100 people, and it started as a forum before it was a Facebook group. And we're like, oh my God, 100 people. And then I remember when we hit 1,000 and I was like, we will never have more than 1,000. This is, more than 10 times more than I thought we'd ever get. And now our group has over 10,000 members. It's incredibly active. There's people who do all different kinds of sports in there. I remember looking through like the pictures, and there are people doing Highland games, like legitimately chucking trees as their sport. There are people doing fencing, people who do hand cycling. There's a para hockey player who just joined recently. So there's all these different kinds of people and all this different advice you can get in an environment that is safe. So you know that you're not, when you say, how can I get faster? You're not going to get some diet culture BS as a response, but you're going to get like legitimate options.
Yeah, it's an amazing group. And like you said, like finding just answers to simple questions. You feel like you're supported, and you just have a community, because I know in the fitness industry, especially the fitness instructors, if I go to a fitness conference, I'm going to be surrounded by, not that, I'm going to be surrounded by everyone wearing Lululemon, and a lot of the vendors there, they don't have sizes for, I may find they may have one extra large, and that's the one option and the one solid color. There's no place that I can just ask questions, and the support is just amazing. So talking about the industry, you mentioned certifications. In your original certification, you were taught how to work with specialty populations, which, I could understand specialty populations if you're pregnant or if you're a senior. Yeah, there's problems around that. So what would you like to see change with certifications as new people enter, young people or any age enters the fitness industry and says, I want to become a fitness instructor, and they're going to be influencing, hundreds, maybe thousands of clients along the way. So we want it done right. What would you like to see shifted in the industry so that way it's safer and just less harmful?
I mean, I'd like to see the industry stop selling weight loss. My very first certification in 1996, they gave us a math formula. And they were like, if your client isn't losing weight, then they're lying. And I'm quoting here, gently confront them. And that then and now is horrible advice, right? But just last year, when I did my CEUs to recertify, they still said, oh, intentional weight loss is possible, but they just sort of made a vague reference to caloric deficit, and they linked to a study to supposedly show this was possible that was less than a year long. And I was like, let me just take a break from studying to bang my head against a desk, right? You should know better than this. So I'd like to see us do better and talk about health rather than body size. And then certainly stop teaching people to stereotype people based on how they look and their body size. And it creates a situation where when I walk into an exercise class, a certified fitness professional is taught to assume I'm a beginner and to come up to me and tell me like if it's too hard, that's okay. And like these are all good things to say, but to single out the fat people in class for that is a real problem. And it discourages people who wants to come and be condescended to and treated like a beginner despite the work that you've put in and the advancement that you've made. And again, there's nothing better about being an advanced exerciser than a beginning exerciser. It's not about that. It's about how we're stereotyping and making assumptions about fat people and the way that that impacts fat people's ability to feel safe and welcome and like they deserve to take up space and participate.
Well, hopefully we will see shifts in the industry with people like yourself and other guests that have been on the show working towards shifting not only certifications, because that helps, future instructors, but also the continuing education credits, like you had mentioned, because that's just keeps perpetuating whatever is out there for current instructors. And we'd like to see that shifted. So one other thought I had, because we in our pre-interview, you mentioned something about non-scale victories that are actually thin privilege. So could you talk a little bit about that? Because that was something that kind of made me go, like, I want to know more about that.
Yeah, so the idea behind non-scale victories was to move away from weight loss as a goal and move to other things. So the idea might be an increase in strength or stamina, or like I couldn't transfer from my wheelchair to my bed easily, and now I can, like non-scale victory. But what people have done instead was create victories around weight loss that aren't specifically scale. So you'll see people brag, oh, I can now shop in quote unquote normal size clothing stores, or oh, I can, now I only need one seat on the plane, etc. And so what that's doing is just celebrating that you are at least temporarily not being oppressed the same way fat people are. That's not actually like a glorious victory. That's just like, oh, look, I have temporarily at least moved myself out of an oppressed class. And so celebrating those things, first of all, they're still scale victories, right? They're still about a body size manipulation. So whether you're talking about how much you weigh or what clothing size you are, or how you're accommodated, that's still a scale victory, really. And it's celebrating the fact that you're not oppressed in the way that other people are, which is just really kind of a gross thing to celebrate. So when we talk about non-scale victories, it's important that what we're talking about is like personal achievement outside of body size manipulation.
Interesting. I had never even thought about that. I mean, I understand that, especially when you spoke about the dress shopping in a smaller dress, you're basically saying you lost weight. Like that's
right.
that's still a weight loss victory. So you're just being sneaky about it. So or thinking you're being non-weight non-weight loss goal, but you really are. But that's just really interesting. I think there's so many subtle ways, and we could talk for hours about all the subtle, sneaky, just awful ways that weight stigma shows itself. And maybe we'll get into more in future episodes. I will put your information in the show notes because I think that every listener needs to follow you. And if you are, if you don't carry any weight bias and you're HACE aligned, and then I encourage you to join the Fit Fatties group, apply, get in when they approve you, because they're going to make sure that you are aligned, because it really is a safe place. And I'm also going to put in, you mentioned a study earlier, so I'm going to put that in the show notes as well, because I think it's really important. Something that you do that um, is really, really helpful is you bring the science, you bring the research and the science, and you back it up. So you're not just talking here. You have the data to back it up. That's why I was so impressed at the CanFit Pro session, because you were just, I mean, dropping bombs left and right on that panel. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks. I do want to say, because the research is a big piece of what I do, and I'll share with you a website that has a research bank so people can see all of it. But I also want to always be clear that fat people have the right to live without shame, stigma, bullying, or oppression. It doesn't matter why we're fat. It doesn't matter if there are health impacts to being fat, and it doesn't matter if we could become thin. Fat people have the right to live in peace, period. And so I think it's important to talk about the research because that's so much of what's used to oppress fat people. But no matter what the research says, fat people still don't deserve oppression.
Yes. And I think that in the fitness industry, it is heightened, and it's it needs a change. It needs to change fast. So
For
more
real.
people aren't affected in a negative way. So I'd like to ask you a couple lighter questions, just to get for our guests, to get our listeners to get to know you a little bit better. And again, I'll put all your information in the show notes, but what is your favorite way? You do a lot of different movement. We just heard in this episode, all the different things. So what is your, like right now, what is your favorite way to move your body?
Dance is always my first love. And so my partner is high risk. So we're still essentially quarantined right now. And so since COVID, I've been doing a lot of like dance classes in my living room kind of thing. And that's what I'm jamming on right now.
Yeah, dance is fun. You don't need anything. Well, you need music unless you want to sing, but yeah, some music and a little bit of space. And what is your favorite, speaking of music, what is your favorite? Do you have a favorite artist or genre of music or a favorite song right now, whether it be for dancing or for just listening?
I cannot pick except to say that I am a parody song enthusiast. Right now, I'm obsessed with medical school parody songs on YouTube. Actually, once wrote a parody song about high risk people, vaccines for high risk folks that got delivered to, I co wrote the song and it got delivered to Gavin Newsom as a singing telegram,
Oh
thus
my
making sure
gosh.
that I will never lose a game of two truths and a lie ever for the rest of my life. But yeah, so I will, for this purposes of this, I will go with parody songs as my favorite.
Okay, and can we access that video or the one that you wrote? Can we put it in the show notes?
I will find Kathy Deach, who is a Broadway star, who will be mad at me for calling her a star, but she totally is, sang it for us. And I will find the video and send it to you to put in the show notes.
I cannot wait. I'm really looking forward to that. So what is your favorite way to practice self-care?
Um, my favorite way to practice self care is to belong to fat liberation spaces so that I can go and no matter what the group is talking about, right, whether it's movement or just hanging out or whatever, I can be in a space that is safe and affirming for me.
Hmm. And then finally, since you've just mentioned that you are still quarantining, you might still be watching a lot of binge-worthy things. Is there anything that you'd like to share that maybe you're not a TV watcher, maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a podcast or a book, or there's something that you found binge-worthy over the last year and a half?
Um, so Latoya Shante Snell is another fat athlete. She's a fat Black disabled marathon and ultra marathoner, and working on triathlons and powerlifting. Super amazing person, and she has a podcast, Fat Chef Running, and it's incredible. So I'll send you a link to that as well. But I've never miss an episode of that.
All right. Well, our listeners will likely go and give that a listen right now. And again, I'll put your information in the show notes so people can connect with you and learn more, because there is so much more to learn. This is just a little tiny bite, a little snippet. So I'm so grateful that you were able to spend the time with me today and share your knowledge and all the work that you're doing in this space. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I'm so grateful for the work that you do. I'm so grateful to be a little part of it today. So thanks a zillion.
So that was my interview with Reagan, and I know that that was full of so much great content, and you will want to go follow her, subscribe to her Facebook group, check out the resources, a lot of resources that she has compiled to help you just know more and just do better. So please go to our website at breakingbodybiases.com to connect with Reagan and to learn more and to dive deeper. And if you like today's show or any of our episodes, be sure to take a minute, rate and review our show wherever you listen to the podcast. It helps others find our show and helps to just grow this community, which we know is so important if we want to see lasting change in the industry. Again, all of Reagan's information along with all of our episodes are on our website. If you have any questions or comments, you can also leave us a message on our website, and we're always looking for amazing guests like Reagan. So if you yourself are someone that would be a great guest, or you know someone that would be a great guest, apply on our website. We can't wait to continue to share amazing people with you and help destroy diet culture.